The bustling alien marketplace was like nothing the human had ever seen. Towering structures of glowing crystal loomed overhead, casting a soft, otherworldly light over the winding streets. Strange, floating creatures hovered between stalls, their translucent bodies pulsating with bioluminescence. Vendors called out in languages both melodic and guttural, offering shimmering fabrics, exotic foods, and artifacts humming with unknown energy. The human wandered through the chaos, eyes wide with awe. The scent of something sweet and spicy filled the air, drawing them closer to a food stand lined with iridescent fruits. Just as they reached out to inspect one, they took an unexpected step back, right into someone. A chill ran down their spine as they turned around. She stood taller than him, her skin a deep shade of violet, marked with glowing silver patterns that shifted ever so slightly. Her piercing eyes, an unnatural, mesmerizing gold, locked onto him with an intensity that made his breath hitch. A sharp gasp spread through the crowd around them. Whispers, stares. The air itself felt heavier. The alien woman's lips parted, and her voice, both silky and commanding, rang through the marketplace. "You dare lay your hands upon me?" The human blinked, realizing his hand had just barely brushed against her arm in the collision. It was nothing, a mere accident. But the way she looked at him as if he had committed the ultimate crime sent a wave of dread through his chest. The murmurs in the crowd turned frantic. Then, a single voice cut through the noise. "He has broken the law." A cold shiver ran down his spine as armored guards pushed through the gathering spectators. The alien woman's eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "By the sacred decree of my people," she said slowly, "you are now my mate." The human's heart nearly stopped. What? They stammered, stepping back instinctively, only to find the crowd closing in behind them. The alien woman's golden eyes gleamed under the marketplace's neon glow, a mixture of annoyance and something deeper. Resignation, perhaps? "The law is clear," she continued, her voice steady but laced with irritation. "A touch, however brief, is a bond sealed by fate. By our customs, you are now bound to me as my mate." The words hit the human like a physical blow. Mate? As in, married? That was insane. "There has to be some mistake," they protested, shaking their head. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to touch you." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, a mix of shock and intrigue. Some watched with amusement, others with a sense of solemn reverence. The guards, massive and clad in sleek obsidian armor, moved in closer. "There are no accidents," one of the guards intoned, their voice metallic through their helmet. "The law does not bend for outsiders." Panic began to creep into the human's chest. This couldn't be happening. They were just a visitor, a tourist exploring the wonders of this alien world. They had no intention of staying, let alone being forced into some kind of intergalactic marriage. They turned back to the alien woman, hoping for some kind of mercy. "Look, what if we just pretend this never happened?" they offered weakly. Her expression darkened. "You insult my honor." Okay, wrong choice of words. Before the human could backtrack, the guards took firm hold of their arms. "By the authority of the Celestial Accord, you will be escorted to the binding chamber for the official union," one of the guards declared. "The what?" The human's eyes widened in horror. The alien woman exhaled sharply, as if this was the last thing she wanted to deal with today. Then, stepping forward, she loomed over them, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Struggle if you wish," she murmured. "It will change nothing." And with that, the human was dragged toward an uncertain fate. The human thrashed against the guard's grip, but their strength was unreal, like trying to break free from solid steel. The marketplace blurred around them as they were forcefully escorted through the winding streets, the murmurs of curious onlookers fading into the distance. They turned to the alien woman, still walking beside them, her expression unreadable. "You can't seriously be okay with this," they pleaded. You don't even know me. Shouldn't we, I don't know, have a choice in this? She barely spared them a glance. Choice? Do you think I desired this, human? Her voice was smooth yet sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. You touched me. The law is absolute. If I defy it, I face exile. You, on the other hand, would be disposed of. The human swallowed hard. Disposed of did not sound like a mild punishment. They turned to the guards, desperation creeping into their voice. This is ridiculous. Surely there's a way to appeal. One of the guards let out a low, guttural chuckle. Appeal? Foolish outsider. The binding law predates your civilization. There is no escape. The human's mind raced. They needed to find a way out of this. Fast. The group arrived at a massive structure carved from dark stone, its surface embedded with glowing alien runes. Enormous doors rumbled open as they approached, revealing an opulent chamber inside. The walls pulsed with an ethereal energy, casting shifting patterns across the floor. At the center stood an ornate platform, surrounded by hooded figures whose faces were hidden beneath shimmering veils. This is the binding chamber, the alien woman said coolly. Once the ceremony is complete, our fates will be sealed. The humans' pulse pounded in their ears. One of the hooded figures raised their hands, and a holographic sigil formed in the air. Their voice, ancient and commanding, echoed through the chamber. By the decree of the celestial accord, the bond is acknowledged. Step forth, and let the rite begin. The guards released the human, pushing them toward the platform. Their legs felt like lead as they hesitated, glancing between the alien woman and the ominous figures surrounding them. She turned to face them fully for the first time since the incident, her expression still unreadable. Then, in a voice softer than before, she spoke. If you resist, they will force the bond upon you. A pause. Then, almost imperceptibly, she added, if you comply, I may find a way to undo this later. A spark of hope flickered in the human's chest. It wasn't much, but it was something. Taking a deep breath, they stepped onto the platform. The air inside the binding chamber was thick with energy, a strange, almost electric force humming in the space between them. The human could feel it in their bones, a weight pressing down, demanding obedience. The hooded officiator stepped forward, their voice echoing unnaturally as they spoke. The sacred decree of our ancestors is absolute. A touch between two souls binds them under celestial law. The union must be witnessed and sealed. The human clenched their fists. This is insane, they muttered under their breath. The alien woman, whose name they still didn't even know, stood motionless beside them, her posture rigid but unreadable. She had barely acknowledged their presence, offering no comfort or reassurance, only cold acceptance of the situation. The officiator raised a shimmering crystal above their head, and golden symbols flared to life in the air around them. Rings of glowing text spun outward, encircling the human and the alien woman, forming an intricate web of ancient power. This bond is irreversible, the officiator continued. By law, you are now bound as mates, forever entwined in fate's design. Wait, forever? The human blurted out, heart pounding. I thought she said there was a way to undo this. At that, the alien woman finally turned her head, her glowing golden eyes narrowing slightly. There is a process, she admitted, her voice cool and controlled. But it is long, dangerous, and rarely granted. The human gaped at her. Rarely? So there's a chance I could be stuck with you? A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. I am just as displeased with this as you are, human. Great. Glad we're on the same page. The officiator ignored their exchange, continuing the ritual. The glowing text spun faster, tightening its orbit around them. The pressure in the air intensified, making it hard to breathe. From this moment forth you are one. Your paths shall not diverge. Your bond is eternal, written in the stars. The crystal pulsed, and in a flash of blinding light, the symbols collapsed inward, sinking into their skin. The human gasped, feeling a rush of warmth flood their chest. A strange, unfamiliar sensation, like something foreign was now imprinted on their very being. It was done. The guards released their grip, stepping back in silent acknowledgement of the completed ritual. The officiator lowered their hands and spoke one final time. "The bond is sealed. May your fates be prosperous together." The alien woman turned sharply on her heel, her cape billowing behind her as she strode toward the chamber's exit. "Come," she said without looking back. "Your new life begins now." The human stood frozen for a second before groaning and rubbing their face. Unbelievable still. With no other choice, they followed after her, toward a future they never asked for. The moment they stepped outside the binding chamber, the human was hit with a wave of reality. The marketplace that had once been a dazzling wonder now felt overwhelming, too bright, too loud, too alien. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on their chest like a vice. They weren't just a tourist anymore. They were bound to someone they didn't even know, trapped in a foreign world with no way out. The alien woman walked ahead, her strides confident, almost impatient. She hadn't spared them a single glance since leaving the chamber. "Hey," the human called out, jogging to catch up. "Can we talk about this?" "There is nothing to discuss," she said coolly. "Nothing to... Are you serious? I just got magically married against my will. You don't think that warrants at least some conversation?" She stopped abruptly, turning to face them. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Tall, powerful, her golden eyes burning like twin suns. "You think I wanted this?" she said, her voice sharp, barely restrained. "You think I chose to be bound to some clueless off-worlder?" The human flinched. Okay, that stung. She exhaled, shaking her head. "I am Velis, daughter of House Exthari, a warrior, a noble, and heir to one of the most powerful families in this sector. My fate was already written before I was born. You have unraveled everything." The human blinked. I didn't mean to." "No," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You didn't. But intention does not matter. The law has no mercy." For the first time, there was something in her tone beyond irritation. Frustration, yes, but also something deeper. Resentment, even sadness. The human sighed, rubbing the back of their neck. "Look, I don't want to make this worse for you. If there's a way to fix this, I'll do whatever it takes." Velis studied them for a long moment before turning sharply. "Then you will do as I say." The human frowned. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer, simply gesturing for them to follow. With no other option, they sighed and fell into step beside her. As they walked, towering spires of alien architecture loomed in the distance. Hovering vehicles zipped through the sky, neon symbols glowing along the curved streets. This world was breathtaking, overwhelming. And now it was their home. Velis led them toward a sleek, hovering transport, its design sharp and elegant. A uniformed attendant bowed as she approached, opening the door. "Welcome back, Lady Velis. Shall I inform the High Council of your arrival?" Velis hesitated, her jaw tightening. "No," she said firmly. "Not yet." The human raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "Aren't they the ones in charge?" She shot them a warning glance before stepping inside. "Because if they find out, your life may be the price of this mistake." The human's stomach dropped. "Oh." They silently climbed into the transport after her, the doors sealing shut behind them. As the vehicle lifted into the sky, they stared out at the alien city stretching beneath them, heart pounding. What had they gotten themselves into? The ride was silent. The human sat stiffly across from Velis, watching the alien city blur past the window as the transport glided through the sky. Towering spires of glowing crystal and smooth metal stretched as far as the eye could see, their surfaces reflecting neon streaks from the bustling sky lanes. Despite the breathtaking view, all they could focus on was the growing knot of anxiety in their chest. "So," they finally said, breaking the silence, "where are we going?" Velis didn't look up from the sleek, holographic interface she was scanning. "My estate." Her estate, right. Of course she had an estate, She wasn't just some random alien, she was nobility, which meant their accidental bond wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a scandal. The human ran a hand down their face. And what happens when we get there? Velis's golden eyes flicked up to meet theirs. You will remain in my home under my protection until I determine the best course of action. The way she said it sent a shiver down their spine. Under your protection? They repeated. From what? She hesitated, then turned her gaze back to her interface. It is not uncommon for political rivals to take advantage of an unexpected weakness. The human straightened. A weakness? You mean me? Velis didn't answer, but she didn't have to. The weight of it settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had been worried about being stuck in a forced marriage. Now they had a much bigger problem. Survival. Before they could ask anything else, the transport descended, slowing as it approached a massive, sprawling estate built into the side of a floating mountain. The architecture was sleek and angular, with glowing veins of blue energy running through the walls like circuitry. Waterfalls cascaded from the cliffs, suspended in gravity-defying streams that curved around the structure like living ribbons. The transport landed smoothly on a circular platform, and the doors slid open. Velis stepped out without a word, and the humans scrambled after her. The moment their feet touched the platform, a group of uniformed attendants rushed forward, bowing low. Lady Velis, one of them said, a slender alien with deep green skin and luminous silver eyes. Your return was unexpected. Shall I prepare the house elders for an audience? Velis's expression remained unreadable. No one is to know of this yet. The attendant hesitated but bowed again. As you wish. The human shifted awkwardly as more attendants arrived, some clearly confused by their presence. A few exchanged glances, but no one dared to speak out of turn. Velis turned to them. Follow me. She led them through the grand entrance, an enormous set of obsidian doors that slid open at her approach, revealing a vast hall lined with banners displaying intricate alien symbols. The air inside was cool and carried the faint scent of something floral yet unfamiliar. They passed through corridors of smooth stone and glowing crystal, past grand staircases and towering windows that overlooked the floating peaks beyond. It was all stunning, impossibly luxurious, and utterly overwhelming. Finally, Velis stopped before a set of doors. With a wave of her hand, the doors slid open, revealing a lavish chamber bathed in soft, ambient light. This will be your quarters, she said. The human stepped inside cautiously. The room was massive, far larger than any place they had ever stayed before. A bed that looked big enough to fit 5 people sat at the center, draped in dark, silky fabric. The walls were embedded with soft, pulsing lights, and a curved window overlooked the breathtaking expanse of floating mountains. Thanks, they said, unsure of what else to say. Velis lingered at the doorway, her expression unreadable. You will remain here until I decide what to do next. Do not leave this room unless I permit it. The human frowned. So, I'm a prisoner now? She exhaled sharply. You are under my protection. You have no idea what kind of danger you're in. The human crossed their arms. Then maybe you should tell me. For a moment she said nothing. Then with a quiet sigh, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. There are those who would see me fall, human. Rivals who seek to weaken my house. The fact that I have been bound to you, a nameless outsider, will be seen as a disgrace. And in my world, weakness is not tolerated. The human swallowed hard. So what you're saying is, if the wrong people find out about this, I'm dead? Velis didn't look away. Yes. A cold chill ran down their spine. Get some rest, she said, turning sharply. We will discuss this further in the morning. The doors slid shut behind her, leaving the human alone in their new prison. They sat down heavily on the impossibly soft bed, running a hand through their hair. This wasn't just a bad day. This was a nightmare. Sleep didn't come easily. The human lay awake in the massive bed, staring up at the ceiling, where faint glowing lines pulsed like constellations. Every time they closed their eyes, their mind raced, flashes of the day's events playing over and over again. The marketplace, the accusation, the ritual, the feeling of something foreign embedding itself into their very being. And now, they were here, trapped in the estate of an alien noblewoman who barely tolerated them, in a world where just existing in the wrong place at the wrong time could get them killed. They exhaled sharply and sat up. No way I'm just sitting here like some caged animal. Pushing off the bed, they moved to the large window overlooking the floating mountains. The view was stunning, too beautiful for the circumstances they were in. Their fingers brushed against the smooth glass-like surface of the wall near the door. Maybe it would slide open if they... A sharp beep sounded, and an unseen force pushed them back. The doors remained sealed. Figures, they muttered. A voice crackled to life from somewhere in the room. Attempting to leave without authorization will trigger security protocols. The human spun around, eyes scanning the walls. Who said that? A glowing symbol flickered to life near the ceiling, forming into a small floating orb of golden light. IMAERI, the estate's integrated artificial intelligence. Lady Velis has restricted your movements for your protection. The human sighed. Great. A fancy talking lock. Silence. Then, I also manage household operations, monitor security, and provide assistance as required. They crossed their arms. Can you unlock the door? No. Figures, they muttered again, rubbing their temples. For a while, they just stood there, thinking. There had to be a way to fix this. Maybe if they could talk to someone with more authority than Velis, they could explain that this was all just a misunderstanding. They turned back to AERI. Okay, let's say I wanted to get out of here with permission. Who would I need to talk to? AERI responded immediately. Only Lady Velis has the authority to grant you unrestricted movement. The human sighed. And where is she now? Lady Velis is currently in the council chamber, attending a private audience with the elders of House Exthari. Their stomach tightened. Wait. The people she didn't want to know about this? There was a brief pause. Then, AERI's voice returned. That information is classified. The human ran a hand down their face. She's telling them. Or at least, she's trying to do damage control. If things went badly, if her house elders saw them as a liability rather than a mistake to correct, they didn't even want to think about what would happen. They turned back to the window, pressing their forehead against the cool surface. Outside, the sky was darkening, twin moons rising over the floating peaks in the distance. For now, they were safe. But how long would that last? The hours crawled by in the silence of the room. The moonlight from the twin celestial bodies bathed the estate in an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The human couldn't shake the feeling that every corner of the space was watching them, waiting for them to make a wrong move. They paced back and forth, trying to ignore the unease crawling under their skin. The soft hum of the estate's AERI had grown almost comforting by now, like the steady pulse of a heartbeat in an otherwise cold, unfamiliar world. Okay, I can't just wait around. They stopped in front of the large window again, looking out at the vast landscape of floating mountains and waterfalls that glittered like a dream. There had to be a way to talk to Velis, to figure out what was really going on, to make her see that they didn't want to be part of this mess. The door suddenly slid open with a soft whoosh, startling the human out of their thoughts. Standing in the doorway was Velis. Her expression was unreadable, the cool, regal mask back in place. She stepped inside without a word, her long cape flowing behind her like a wave of darkness. The humans swallowed hard, forcing themselves to stand tall despite the knot of tension tightening in their stomach. You've had time to think, Velis said, her voice calm, almost indifferent. About what? The human shot back, voice sharper than they intended. About how I'm stuck here, in your mansion, because of some law that doesn't even make sense? Her eyes narrowed slightly. The law doesn't need to make sense. It simply is. The human clenched their fists, trying to keep the anger at bay. And what do you expect me to do? Sit here and pretend everything's fine? You're acting like I'm the problem, but you're the one who forced this on me. Velis didn't flinch. She stepped closer, the silence between them thickening. You think I wanted this? She repeated, her voice quieter now, though no less cold. Do you think I want to be bound to a human? The human froze, their breath catching in their throat. For a moment, there was something almost vulnerable in Velis's gaze, a flicker of doubt, of something that wasn't pure calculation. But it was gone before they could even make sense of it. She looked away, her expression hardening once more. This union is not about desire. It is about duty. Duty, the human echoed, the word tasting bitter on their tongue. And what is that supposed to mean? That I'm just a pawn in your game? Velis's lips curled into a tight, barely there smile. If that were true, you would have been discarded long ago. No, human, you are now part of my fate. And whether you like it or not, you will have a place in the future I must build. The human took a step back. You've been talking about we and our fate for days, but all I'm hearing is you making decisions without asking me. Velis finally took a step closer, her eyes locking onto theirs. I never asked for this either. I never asked to be the one to carry this burden, but here we are, and there is no going back. The human swallowed, the weight of her words pressing on them like a physical force. There was something unspoken between them, an invisible line that neither one seemed willing to cross. So what happens now? They asked quietly. Velis's gaze softened just a fraction. Now, you stay here, you learn, you adapt. I will try to keep you safe from those who would seek to use you against me. Great. So now I'm your bodyguard? The words were out before they could stop them, a nervous laugh escaping. Velis didn't smile, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. If you wish to view it that way. The human exhaled sharply, sinking back onto the bed, defeated. And if I don't? She paused, then said simply, then you become a liability. And liabilities are not kept in House Exthari. The coldness in her voice sent a chill down their spine. The threat was subtle, but it was there. They weren't just a misplaced guest. They were part of something much bigger than themselves now. Velis turned on her heel, her cape swishing behind her as she made her way to the door. Rest. Tomorrow we begin your education in the ways of my people. Before she exited, she hesitated for a brief moment. You will learn to respect the laws here, for your own sake. And with that, she was gone, the door sliding shut with a soft final click. The human remained where they were, staring at the ceiling, their mind racing with the implications of everything Velis had said. Respect the laws, learn the way of her people. Was there a way out of this? Was there any chance they could survive this marriage? They didn't have the answers yet, but they knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The morning came far too soon. The human awoke to the soft, rhythmic hum of the estate, as if the very walls were alive, breathing with a pulse of their own. The sunlight streaming through the massive windows bathed the room in a warm, golden hue, but it did little to ease the weight in their chest. They had barely slept, the thoughts of their strange new reality running on a loop. Forced marriage, alien politics, and a house full of enemies. They could feel the pressure tightening around them with every passing hour. The door slid open, and Velis entered without a word, her expression unreadable as always. She was dressed in a dark, form-fitting outfit that looked like a cross between armor and ceremonial garb, the sleek lines of it accentuating her statuesque form. You're awake, she said, her tone neutral. The human rubbed their eyes and sighed. It's hard to sleep when you're stuck in a nightmare. Velis's gaze flicked to them, her eyes narrowing slightly. This is no nightmare. This is reality, and you must learn to live in it. The human sat up, still trying to make sense of it all. So, what now? What's this education you're talking about? Velis's lips curled into a faint smile, though it held no warmth. Now, you begin to understand the laws of my people, what you have to do to survive here. Survive, The words struck them like a cold splash of water. She nodded. Survival is everything, human. In this society, power is everything. The moment you become a liability, you cease to exist. Your fate is tied to mine. And right now, my family's survival depends on your compliance. The weight of her words settled heavily on their shoulders. So, what are you suggesting? That I just sit here and do nothing while you play politics? Velis's gaze turned cold again. If you want to survive, you will learn to play politics, whether you like it or not. The human stood up abruptly, pushing the hair from their face. And what exactly are we supposed to be learning? What kind of laws are we talking about here? Because all I've seen so far is your life being decided by people I've never even met. Velis raised an eyebrow, her expression hardening slightly. You think this is a choice? This bond, this marriage, it's the least of what could have happened to you. The elders of House HFY are not known for their compassion. If I hadn't bound you to me, they would have taken you as leverage, or worse. The human's stomach twisted. Leverage? Worse? What could be worse than being stuck here with no way out? Okay, they said, swallowing the knot in their throat. So, tell me what I need to do. Velis studied them for a long moment as though weighing their resolve. Finally, she nodded. First, you must learn the hierarchy of power here, the families, the alliances, the rivalries. Then you will understand where you fit into this web of politics. The human crossed their arms, a frown tugging at their lips. Sounds like a lot of scheming and backstabbing. Exactly, Velis replied with a sharp edge to her voice. A noble life is not about honor. It's about control, power, and you will learn to navigate it if you want to stay alive. The human didn't know whether to be terrified or impressed by her cold, pragmatic approach, but one thing was clear. They were in way over their head. Fine, they said, trying to push the uncertainty aside. Let's start with this education of yours. Velis motioned toward the door. Come with me. I will begin your lessons now. The sooner you understand the rules, the sooner we can begin working on securing your position here. As they followed her through the vast halls of the estate, the human couldn't help but feel the weight of their new reality settling in. They were no longer just a bystander in someone else's world. They were a part of it, whether they wanted to be or not. And in this world, the rules were clear. Survive or perish. The estate was a labyrinth of grand halls, chambers, and corridors, each more magnificent than the last. The human followed Velis through the sprawling complex, feeling smaller and smaller with every step. Despite the overwhelming beauty of it all, there was a sense of coldness in the air, a kind of sterile elegance that made the place feel more like a prison than a palace. They eventually arrived in a large, circular room at the heart of the estate. The walls were lined with alien artifacts, strange, shimmering objects that seemed to hum with an energy of their own. In the center of the room, a massive table stood, covered in holographic displays and ancient texts that hovered in the air like weightless memories. Velis gestured for the human to sit at one of the chairs. This is where we begin your lessons, she said, her voice low and serious. This is where you will learn the delicate balance of power in my world. The human hesitated but eventually sat, the chair cold beneath them. They couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a lesson. It was a test. Velis activated the holographic display, and a series of symbols and diagrams appeared, each one more intricate than the last. You see, House HFY is not just one family. It is part of an intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and political maneuvering that spans across multiple systems. Every move we make is carefully calculated. The human studied the holograms, trying to absorb the information. It was overwhelming. Alien cultures, complex family dynamics, and countless factions vying for control. Every family seemed to have its own agenda, and every decision had consequences. This, the human began, their voice tinged with disbelief. This is what I have to learn. Velis's gaze was steady. Yes, if you want to survive here, you must understand the stakes. The very fact that you exist as my mate, whether you want to be or not, makes you a target. Your value is tied directly to my status, my power. If I fall, so do you. The human shifted uncomfortably in their chair. So, my life depends on you staying in power? Velis didn't flinch. Exactly. Great, the human muttered. So I'm basically a political pawn. That's what this is, right? The corners of Velis's lips tightened, though her expression remained unchanged. You may see it that way, but it's more than that. You are a part of the future I must secure. The people here will respect you, or they will fear you. Either way, you will have influence, but only if you play the game correctly. The humans shook their head, frustration boiling beneath the surface. I don't want to play this game. I don't want any part of this. Velis's gaze hardened, the hint of pity in her eyes quickly replaced by something far colder. You have no choice. You are in this world now, whether you like it or not. Your only option is to adapt. The alternative is far worse. The human stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. No choice. Adapt or die. It felt like they were drowning in a sea of rules and expectations they didn't understand. But even in the chaos of it all, one thing was clear. If they didn't learn to navigate this world, they would become a casualty of it. Okay, they said finally, their voice heavy. What do I need to do first? Velis's expression softened, but only just. We'll start with the families, learn the power dynamics, understand who holds influence, and who is waiting for the chance to strike. Knowledge is your greatest weapon here. She gestured to a new hologram, and the human's eyes scanned it. A map of the galaxy with glowing lines representing allegiances and tensions between the different houses. The web of power was more complex than they could have imagined, and as Velis began to explain the intricate details of each family's position, their history, and the threats they posed to House Xthari, the human realized just how deep they were already in. This wasn't a world they could escape from. This was their new reality, and if they were going to survive it, they would need to learn everything. Fast. Months passed, and the human's life within the confines of the grand estate began to take on a strange rhythm. At first it had felt suffocating. Every day a new lesson, every conversation a test of their will to survive in this alien world. But as time went on, something unexpected began to happen. They began to understand it all. The intricate web of power, the delicate dance of alliances, the unspoken rules of House Xthari and the other noble houses. They learned to move through the halls with a quiet confidence, to speak the language of politics and diplomacy with an ease they hadn't thought possible. Velis, despite her cold demeanor, became more than just a stern teacher. There were moments, brief, fleeting, that revealed another side to her. A side that was not a ruler, not a calculating noblewoman, but a person caught in the same web of fate as the human. It was during one of these rare moments that the human finally saw the truth behind Velis's actions. She wasn't just using them for her own gain. She was protecting them. Every lesson, every rule, every decision she made had been to ensure their safety in a world where survival was not guaranteed. And gradually, the human began to realize that they didn't feel like a pawn anymore. They had become a partner in a cause far greater than themselves. One evening, as the twin moons rose high above the floating peaks, casting a soft glow across the estate, Velis approached the human in the courtyard. There was no political agenda behind her gaze, no cold calculation in the way she looked at them. "You've come a long way," she said quietly, her voice almost soft. The human smiled, the corners of their eyes,